I'm an insurance expert. And, my sort of role is really just educating consumers, talking to the media, and letting people know how their insurance works. Because if there's one product that is very confusing to an average person, it's insurance. It's very normal for someone to buy an insurance policy expecting it's going to cover something, and then they find out after the fact that it actually doesn't cover them. And that's a scenario we want to help people avoid.
Right. And that's an important thing to mention because when people talk about home insurance, often that does not include flood insurance.
Exactly. So home insurance policies do not cover your home against flooding. So, Texas being a state that's so hurricane prone, and you guys get some crazy rain out there, flooding is pretty common. Everyone's experienced it once, or they know someone who's experienced it. And therefore, not having flood insurance puts your house at risk because you're not going to get paid for repairing your house, or even if your house gets washed away, you're not going to get paid to rebuild your house. So fire and floods are two of the most expensive kind of damages that can happen to your house. Fires are thankfully covered by homeowners insurance, but flooding is not, especially if the flooding is coming externally. So if your pipe bursts and you fix that, that could still be covered by your home insurance. But if the flood came from outside, so there was like a river that overran, or you live near the coast and water came into your house, that's not covered by home insurance. And unfortunately, a lot of people find that out too late when their house has already been destroyed. And then they file a claim and they find out, oh, wait, I'm not going to get any money for it. And that's a really scary situation to be in.
Right. Especially, well, we'll get into home prices and all that and how much more expensive things have gotten to fix your home, raw materials. Right. There's inflation on that. Home prices have also gone up. So you have all of these things that all together make things a lot more difficult for homeowners when they find themselves in a very vulnerable position already. You released a report that showed that almost 95% of homeowners in the entire state of Texas don't have flood insurance.
Yes.
When you saw those numbers, what did you think?
I had to sit down for a minute because it was a little shocking. To put that number in perspective, there are 11,654,971 homes in Texas, and just under 630,000 homes have flood insurance. So you're talking over 11 million homeowners in Texas don't have flood insurance. And the number of losses that are happening outside the high flood risk zones where flood insurance is mandatory is 1 in 2. It's over 52%. So your chance of your house getting flooded is not a 1 in a 1,000 year thing. It's not a matter of if your house is going to get flooded. I think people need to shift their mindset and think about when their house is going to get flooded and prepare accordingly for it.
So this is the other thing, because some people think maybe if they live in the center of the state, well, I don't live near a body of water. I don't live near the ocean. There's no river. There's no lake by me, but the flood risk still exists. Could you talk about that?
Yeah. So one of the things that a lot of people look at when they're figuring out how much flood risk their home has is to look at FEMA maps. So FEMA has published these flood maps, which will give you a sort of a prediction of how likely your home is going to flood. If you live in a special flood hazard area, they're saying your house has a 30% chance of flooding. But if you live outside of that, they're saying your house isn't going to flood, or it's going to flood once every 1,000 years. So a lot of people think, oh, I don't need flood insurance then because FEMA told me my house is safe. But what's happening right now is, scientists across the country are studying real flood risk, and they're saying that due to changing climate and an increase in rain and, other factors, we're seeing more floods happening. And, you're seeing a lot of these 1 in 1,000 year floods happening almost annually. And you could be living up on a mountain, but you could still lose your house to flooding, as we unfortunately saw happen in North Carolina last year. You could think you're safe, but you may be living in a low-lying area, so you may have floodwater rushing from somewhere you may not be aware of. We really can't figure out how floodwater is going to enter the picture. So that's why we're encouraging people to look beyond the FEMA maps and to find out if anywhere near them has flooded, for example. Or, it could be like somewhere in a 10-mile radius. Like, do you know of someone, your neighbor who's experienced flooding, a friend who's living the next town over? If they've reported some kind of flooding, it's a really good sign that you should get flood insurance. While we recommend everyone get flood insurance just for safety and peace of mind, I understand times are hard right now. Not everybody can afford it in this year, but it's definitely something to think about. If not this year, maybe next year, see if you can make your finances work a little to make sure that you have flood insurance.
So what can flood insurance cover?
So basically, flood insurance if you get flood insurance from the National Flood Insurance Program, which is the government flood insurance, it'll cover about $250,000 of your dwelling. So if your house gets destroyed or damaged, they will pay $250,000 to help you rebuild. It also covers certain personal items that might get damaged by the flood. And if you're a renter, you can also get flood insurance. It will be a lot cheaper and it'll only cover your personal items. If you are someone who lives in a more expensive home, and this is quite common if you live in one of the big cities in Texas, you have a really big home, $250,000 isn't going to cut it. It's going to cost a lot more to rebuild your home. So in that case, you can also explore private flood insurance that offer up to $1 million of dwelling coverage. And I bring up this word dwelling coverage because that's actually the number that's really important for both your flood and your home insurance. If you got home insurance around the time that you bought your home, and that was 10, 15 years ago, they would have set the rate to reflect how much it would cost to rebuild your home back then. And your insurance company will slowly update that number. But that's the one thing you want to be on top of because, the cost of rebuilding has risen so much. You want to make sure that you're doing an assessment of how much it's going to cost to rebuild your home and get the kind of dwelling coverage that's going to cover that rate.
Now, the figures that you showed me, the numbers came from Value Penguin.
Yes.
Did Lending Tree pay Value Penguin to look into the information? Where did they pull all this data from? I'm just curious as to how you guys work together for this.
Yeah, so Lending Tree and Value Penguin are kind of the same company. Value Penguin is the insurance research subsidiary of Lending Tree. So our website is just full of information that anyone looking up anything about insurance, they could probably find an answer at valuepenguin.com. We're more focused on the research side. And our goal, as always, is to educate consumers so they're making the right decisions for their, families, for their finances.
Now, it's interesting that I'm working on this story and you happen to email me on your own at the same time. Is there a reason that you are sounding the alarm on this, the lack of flood insurance? Is it because we are about to enter hurricane season in a few months? Is that it?
Yeah, it's pretty much because you're about to enter hurricane season. And also, it takes 30 days for your national flood insurance policy to kick in. So there is a 30-day waiting period. So I wanted to sound the alarm as early as possible. So if you're a homeowner who's looking to get flood insurance, you should be getting it now so that you have it ready for when the hurricane hits. You cannot sign up for flood insurance like 2 days before a hurricane is coming to your town. And, I actually experienced that back in 2017 when Hurricane Harvey was coming to, I think, Houston. We actually saw a huge surge of people visiting our website looking for information on flood insurance and how to sign up for it. And, we had to actually let them know you cannot sign up for it now. NFIP's not underwriting policies right before it and, a hurricane. And it left a lot of Texans shocked that they couldn't get the help they needed. So we're trying to sound the alarm as quickly as possible so that everyone is ready for it. So when the hurricane hits, they are protected. And knock on wood, there's no hurricane this year. I always wish for no hurricanes this year, but it's always better to be prepared.